When it comes to mental health advocacy and mental health access, we have come a long way, but still have a long way to go. Fortunately, Mental Health Colorado is creating a movement to improve mental health across entire lifespans, and you will enjoy hearing about this important work from President and CEO Vincent Atchity on this episode of Making Our World Better.
Welcome to the Making Our World Better podcast, where you will find motivation and encouragement through lively conversations with inspirational people who every day are making our world a better place. Now, here's your host, Jay Clark.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm Jay Clark, and it is an honor to have a conversation with Vincent Atchity, PhD, President and CEO of Mental Health Colorado. Vincent is an advocate for public health and health equity, works nationally to disentangle mental health and criminal justice, and has served on Governor Hickenlooper and Governor Pulse's behavioral task forces on Colorado's first Jail Standards Commission. Vincent currently serves on Governor Pulse's work group on transformational criminal and juvenile justice, the Colorado Public Defender Commission, the Denver District Attorney Advisory Council on Mental Health, as well as on the board of the Don't Look Back Center, an Aurora-based nonprofit that provides case management support for women, trans women, men, trans men, and non-binary individuals recovering from addiction, trauma, PTSD, domestic violence, and involvement with criminal legal system. Vincent also has been an adjunct professor in the University of Denver's Graduate School of Professional Psychology. And in your spare time, I hope you find some time to sleep. Vincent, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, I can't wait to get into all of this. So how would you describe the mission of Mental Health Colorado to somebody who really doesn't know anything about you?
Sure. So Mental Health Colorado, we say what we're working to do is promote healthier minds across the lifespan for all Coloradans. We've been doing that in the state since 1953, focusing on promoting well-being, increasing access to housing, healthcare, supports and services, and working to end the discrimination that's often associated with our own experiences of mental health, or prohibiting, making it difficult for us to seek and access care for our mental health.
Well, that's one thing I would love to hear your opinion on, or what are some of the impediments for people who could really benefit from mental health treatments? I mean, is it awareness? Is it stigma? Is it money? Is it pride? Or is it all of those?
Yeah, great question. It's all of those, to answer really simply. And it plays out differently for any given individual at any time. And our access varies. There's geographical factors affecting access. So somebody who lives in a heavily populated part of the state, like along the Front Range, obviously has a much larger range of prospective pathways to care than someone who's living in one of the rural or frontier parts of the state. And that factor alone has an impact on the way people experience mental health distress.
And how they deal with it, right?
That's right. A lot of exacerbated feelings of isolation in rural and frontier communities, and heightened risk for suicide and heightened risk for harmful substance use. Generally speaking, living in a larger community tends to have beneficial effects for people's mental health, because mental health is not something we fabricate.
Right.
It is a collective product to some extent.
Yeah, for sure. And it seems like a lot of your work is focused on legislative action, and you're not working on just a specific area. I say that you're kind of going cradle to grave, like you touched on it a little bit. And I'd love for you to explain that a little bit more, that, you're starting with children, and you're looking at it all the way through aging, the wellness in aging, right?
That's right. And it's really one of our basic public education messages, and it's a reminder of what we all ought to know instinctively anyway. And that's that mental health, like physical health, it's what we are, and it's what we've got from one end of life to another. Our habit of segregating mental and physical health it's not helpful, and it's misleading. Health is a word that, when you look up the etymology of the word, it's tied to Middle High German word for whole.
Right.
And pretty much everything we do in this country when it comes to our health is a step away from the whole. We carve ourselves into a gazillion different little pieces and visit a gazillion different specialists to get our different pieces cared for.
Yeah.
And that's not great for our experience of health or
Right.
wholeness. And mental health falls in the same way. So, when we talk about that lifespan, it's just really the reminder that mental health, none of us have it. And just as with physical health, we don't have any expectation that we're going to make it from childhood to the end of life without setbacks.
Right.
And same goes for our mental health. We're going to have setbacks, and any of us can have setbacks in the course of any given day, for that matter. Our mental health varies.
Yeah.
But the key thing is being aware of what our health needs are, and seeking whatever support human ingenuity has devised for help when we need our help, and not going without. Going without mental health help is like going without physical health help. It's a unique frame of mind that would not seek care for your broken arm or for your disease problem.
Right. Well, I mean, and this is always, to me, it's such an interesting part of this discussion is that, I don't need that. I'm a tough guy. I'm good. I'll figure it out. And it's like, you wouldn't do that with a turned ankle or a torn up knee. So
most wouldn't, right?
Right.
Some might, but everybody's shaking their heads at them.
Yeah. So hopefully this tide is turning, which, it feels to me legislatively that there seems to be pretty strong momentum to improve mental health. I mean, do you feel that? And do you feel like we're near a tipping point, or have we hit a tipping point on that yet?
Well, I wouldn't say we're at a tipping point in terms of really transforming the landscape of need versus access to care, because we're in such dire straits, really.
Yeah.
But the encouraging thing is that we have definitely reached and passed the tipping point when it comes to commitment of state leadership and local leadership.
Great.
The awareness level is much higher now than it's ever been, probably, across decades. Yeah. And maybe the pandemic had something to do with heightening people's awareness.
Right.
So that's promising, because humans solve problems when they become collectively aware of them and start focusing effort on them. Yeah.
Well, and we're lucky that there's organizations like yours that are opportunistic when this door opens, that you can step through it and help raise that awareness. You guys are leading a movement, and it's so impressive to see all the different organizations you're working with and all the different organizations that are supporting your work. And how have you kind of seen this evolve the last few years?
Well, interesting. I mean, this building awareness of mental health needs, it's hard to pinpoint exactly when it started. Actually, this is May is Mental Health Awareness Month, as you may know, and we've been running a sort of historical retrospective of mental health in Colorado as part of our communications work this month. And what we've seen back to the 50s, Mental Health Colorado was founded in 1953, is similar concerns and similar mobilization to address things around need versus access to care. But it seems to have kind of a cyclical pattern where there's heightened focus on the issue and some steps taken to address those needs. And then it sort of wanes in prominence for a while, and then it comes to the fore again, and that may be associated with population growth.
Yeah.
which has been tremendous and ongoing in Colorado.
Right.
And have not gotten to that kind of a tipping point where we're really solving the problem, because as a society, we haven't really come to terms with the facts that in any given population, a fifth of that population or more may need access to care at any given time. Yeah.
1 out of 5. Wow.
That's right. Mental health is a common experience.
It's a staggering number.
Health distress.
Yeah.
Not uncommon. And since we continue to act as a society kind of surprised when someone needs mental health care, we haven't built out the system of care.
Yeah.
And that gets us in trouble in tragic ways.
Yeah. And, nobody's immune. I just finished reading Bruce Springsteen's autobiography where, here's one of the most famous people in the world who disappeared for months and years because he was grappling with mental health issues. So nobody is immune.
No, that's right.
Which goes back to that 1 in 5 number is just staggering.
That's right. No one's immune, and it's the more you ask, the more you hear. So it's like you start seeing it everywhere and understanding. And in a room full of folks, if it's 1 in 5, you can do kind of a wave thing where you ask this corner of the auditorium to stand up and then sit down, and then the next fifth, and then the next fifth, because it doesn't stay static either with a single population. It's a moving target.
Right. So today I might be doing fine. You might not be. Tomorrow you might be fine, and I probably am not going to be. So
exactly.
It's such a dynamic situation. But I'd love to hear a little bit more also about, you do great advocacy work, but you also, it looks like you run some really cool programs, the Envision You program, the Care Not Cuffs, and the Brainwave. I'd love to hear some more details about those.
Sure. Well, and I'll start with the Brainwave, because of the 3 of these, this may be our longest running program at Mental Health Colorado. And the Brainwave is our grassroots network of advocates from all over the state that we mobilize in order to advance changes in practice and pass laws that are tied to increasing our access to care. So we encourage anybody to join the Brainwave if you've got a story to share about your need for or experience of accessing care. We mobilize those folks to write to elected officials and to provide testimony and to share their stories with us, so we're best informed in our efforts. The Care Not Cuffs initiative is our national initiative to disentangle mental health and criminal justice. One of the things that too few Americans understand is the extent to which we exist as the incarceration nation. Our rate of incarceration in this country exceeds any other country on the planet, which is a terrible irony for the land of the free.
That's not the gold medal you want.
Not the gold medal you want. And a lot of that is driven by unmet health needs. Jails and prisons are our largest psychiatric institutions.
Wow.
And
thought of it that way.
Yeah, no, it's a terrible thing, and a lot of lives are dramatically worsened through this kind of a pathway. And a lot of the collective effort in Colorado over recent years has been to do this kind of disentangling mental health and criminal justice. And there's a lot of different local heroes leading that kind of an effort all over the country, and that's what Care Not Cuffs puts a spotlight on. The expectation when you're in crisis ought to be that the system is geared to provide you an avenue to healthful solutions,
right?
Not an avenue to exacerbated circumstances, which is what too often happens.
Yeah.
And then I'll mention Envision You too, since you brought it up. Envision You we recently came under the Mental Health Colorado umbrella, and it's a effort focused on increasing access to healthcare and increasing access to culturally affirming care and to overall experiences of well-being for the LGBTQ plus community, which is a community that is particularly vulnerable to mental health distress and access issues.
Great stuff. And I love the verb disentangle, just because it is such a tangled thing when, I've got family in law enforcement and they find themselves in situations that are so intense that, safety's the first thing. And then, but there's so many layers to that it is tangled. Right. And it's just so, it's a hard thing.
Right.
But what advice would you give to a leader as far as keeping in touch with the mental well-being of their teams?
That's a great question. And I like to meet with different organizations for lunch and learns about workplace and well-being and have these kinds of conversations.
Yeah.
One of the key things is, as you mentioned with the Springsteen autobiography, just acknowledging that mental health is something that everybody's going to experience at some point or another, and cultivating that level of awareness and fluency, little reminders that, how is your health, Yeah. And I think that some real authenticity in organizational leadership goes a long way, so that the perfunctory kind of exchange that you have with folks where you say, hey, good morning.
Weekend?
That's right. How you doing? And people answer in monosyllables and move on.
Yep.
As a leader in an organization, you can model a more authentic engagement by not answering in a monosyllable and sharing a little bit more, and also revealing some vulnerability. Everything was great, and then I had to take my dog to the vet because X, Y, and Z or whatever. Right. And that is just sort of a humanizing reminder that everybody's lives have multi-dimensional complications that have an effect on us. And if the leader is modeling that kind of allowing the extra minute and a half for the more authentic exchange, then the colleague is feeling invited to feel and experience their own vulnerability, and then they feel supported in a place where there's an opportunity for real connection.
Well, and this kind of goes back to, I've been doing a lot of reading on trauma, and the best way to deal with that is to find somebody who's kind of gone through the same thing. So kind of along the same line. So that must be a lot of your work, is, especially when it comes to access, is how do you get people with lived experience in front of people who need help?
That's the ongoing challenge.
Right. And that's the secret sauce, if you can find it, right?
That's right. And, not all care providers are well matched to individuals who find their way into their therapeutic space. Mm-hmm. And it's so much trickier with mental health than with aspects of our physical health, because you may not be compatible with the person who's setting your broken arm.
Right.
But as long as they are competent in bone setting, it doesn't matter how incompatible you are. Right. And that is not similarly true,
not the case with mental health, right?
And that's why a lot of you began with questions about the challenges in access. And one of those challenges is finding that match.
Yeah.
Because first of all, there's the hurdle of getting your foot in the door, and there are long delays sometimes to get your foot in the door for care.
Mm-hmm.
But when you do get your foot in the door, you may find that the person you're interacting with is not going to be therapeutically helpful for you, because there is just no common ground or no feeling of affirmative connection. And in some cases, you can come out feeling worse than you went in.
I was going to say that can literally be a matter of life or death, I've learned.
Yeah, sure. And so that exacerbates our challenges.
Dealing with this, it is certainly not for the faint of heart, dealing with trauma and mental health. And what was it that drew you to do this work?
I think looking for challenge and looking
You
for,
found it.
yeah, looking for hard things to take on and
Yeah.
bring some healing energy into, and it was not a direct pathway. I've always been interested in community health and
Mm.
the particular pain point of the intersection of mental health and substance use with the criminal justice system is one of the most painful points in our whole social continuum. And so I feel blessed and cursed to
Yeah,
have
I was going
landed
to
in this
say
spot of doing this difficult work.
that will be a web that will probably never be disentangled.
Well, it's a long haul.
It is
I
a
think
long haul.
we're making some progress.
But do you have any, this is probably not a fair question, but do you have any favorite success stories from your time at Mental Health Colorado?
Oh, sure. And just where to begin. I mean, we've been on a pretty good roll for the last any number of years. This is going to be the end of my fifth year at the organization.
Salute.
And reflective of this shift in leadership, we've had a steady years of progress on making good laws and changes in practice. When I early on, some of the work I did was convening state leadership around this intersection with the criminal justice system. And at that time, that first convening back in 2016, Colorado was still one of 6 states in the country that was using jails for mental health holds.
Oh.
You could be taken off to jail in a state of distress. And shortly after that, in 2017, the state passed a law that no longer allows jails to be used for that purpose. So that was a great win. This year and last year, we have been focused on eating disorder care, which has been sort of off the radar in terms of regulating quality and patients' rights. And we've had a couple of great victories this year and last in terms of eliminating the use of the body mass index measure as the determining factor for your insurance coverage, as well as instituting some expectations about patient dignity and quality of treatment in those facilities. So that really has us on the national map for good progress.
Yeah, fantastic.
And what else? Those are great things. Any number of things. We recently passed House Bill 1355, which is going to help expedite people out of jails settings and toward healthcare when what they need is healthcare, and their need for care dramatically exceeds whatever criminality they might have been associated with. So we're feeling good about the progress we've been making.
That's terrific. And, listening to all of this, I'm not sure if there is such a thing as a nonpartisan issue anymore in our country, but these are nonpartisan issues. These are health and wellness issues that if we can tackle them and do the work that carry forward the work that you guys are doing, it makes everybody's lives better, right?
That is so true. And, we are a proudly nonpartisan organization, and every single bill that we've supported has had support from both sides of the aisle, and it represents exactly that. And maybe it's one of the, places that is fertile with hope and potential for a divided country, is that if we can let's focus on our health and on the health of our communities and on short-term measurable outcomes that are impactful for the health of our communities, starting with kids and making sure that people age well, because we don't do a great job of that in this country either.
Great.
People age into insecurity and isolation, and that's a sad for the country that bills itself as the richest, smartest country in the world. But I think if we get all the leaders focused on these kinds of health issues, maybe we can start wearing away some of this extreme divisive rhetoric that's going on that just makes our health worse.
The old political line, follow the money. This would have an economic impact as well. I mean, I can't imagine how much, if jails are less crowded and people are functioning at a higher level mentally, they're going to be better contributors and everything else. So
that's right. Healthy people make for healthy economies.
That's it. So there's many cases to be made for the work you're doing. But what really kind of energizes you and keeps you excited about the work that you're doing?
I think it's the people all around, and once you've been in it for a while, you realize that it's kind of a small world of the folks that across all the different sectors that are collectively engaged in doing things that are transformative for our health landscape, and it's a great bunch of allies to have, and a great cause to be caught up in.
That's awesome. Well, as we wind down, I'll shift gears a little bit. And one of the things I always like to ask is, what is something you will read, listen to, or watch today?
Well, good question. Let's see. I'm going to read, I start off the day reading the New York Times and glancing at headlines across a few different feeds. There's a feed called the Marshall Project that collects a lot of criminal justice related stuff together. So I look at that.
Fantastic. Can you think of somebody who you'd point to as a role model for you in the work you're doing today?
When I think of who our state leadership is, at the Capitol or in state agencies, in popular media, government tends to get a bad rap. But what people who consume popular media don't understand clearly enough is that our state leadership, the senators and representatives and the folks who work for and run our state agencies, none of these people is making a killing at it.
Right.
And the amount of time and intelligence and energy they bring to doing work that is in the public service is just astounding. And those who too readily sort of scoff at government don't understand what's being done, what people are bringing to it. And I would love to correct that misperception, because public servants, none of us are perfect, but it's the public servants who stuck with it out there and bring all of their intelligence and energy. They're my models for the work I do.
And I am grateful that there's people willing to step forward and do it and subject themselves to the scrutiny and everything else. So I would agree with you on that. But other than Mental Health Colorado, is there an organization out there that you really admire the work they're doing or want to give a shout out to?
Oh, sure. Let's see. Where will I begin there? Well, just yesterday, I was at a fundraising event for the Harm Reduction Action Center, which is a tremendous operation in Denver that does amazing things.
Lastly, most importantly, if anybody wants to learn more about your efforts, become a member of the Brainwave, support you financially, what's the best way to find you?
Please visit mentalhealthcolorado.org. And one of the best things you could do there is just scroll down and click on subscribe, and you'll get our monthly newsletter, which provides all kinds of pathways to be engaged in advocacy for our health.
Well, I would highly encourage everybody to do that. There's some great tips on there for your own personal mental health, which were awesome. Vincent, this has been wonderful. I appreciate everything you're doing, and I wish you great luck and continued success.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Jay. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening, and thanks to Vincent and his team for advancing mental health wellness in Colorado. This podcast has been brought to you by JC Charity Services. Being a leader is hard, and I'd love to help you thrive and bolster your efforts to bring more joy to your work. You can find me at makingourworldbetter.com. To learn more about Mental Health Colorado, support their efforts, and become part of their movement, visit mentalhealthcolorado.org and follow them on social media. Check the show notes for links, and if you enjoyed this podcast, we'd be grateful if you'd share it with a friend. Until next time, I hope you're inspired to find a way to make our world better.